Okay, so in today's video, it's another candid chat, and today I specifically want to talk about fears about our financial futures. Now, I decided to make this video because, you know, especially with everything going on, you may have fears about your future. And I would say that even 4 years ago, before I started on this kind of journey into taking control of my finances, I was also scared about my financial future as well. I was kind of thinking about, how am I going to be able to pay for retirement? Are we even going to have a pension later on? Because there are just things that are just happening where you're just not really sure if you're going to have enough money to live on. Or am I always going to live a life where I currently just worry about having payments or worrying about paying bills or just living paycheck to paycheck and all of that stuff? So I have definitely had those fears of my future, but I will say that there are some things that you can do to overcome those fears and to actually make sure that you're set up to have an amazing financial future for yourself. And so what I want to do on this video is, of course, talk about some of the fears that you may have, but also I want to talk about some of the things that I think you could potentially do or even think about when it comes to your financial future. I've pretty much got my notes here, so don't mind me if I keep looking at my phone. But yeah, let's get on with the video. So first of all, can I just say that in the past, I have looked at articles where they're basically telling you that millennials are screwed. So if you are a millennial or in a younger generation, they're basically saying that your life is over when it comes to our finances, which is probably not the best thing to think about. And it's just, I don't know, it just feels like maybe other generations kind of look at us differently. I don't want to like pull this and make this into kind of a political conversation, but I do think it does have an impact on the way we view money and the way we view our financial futures. For example, for many of us, it's a lot harder to try and save up for a deposit to buy a home. And because house prices have increased so much, sometimes it can feel like it's nearly impossible to be able to buy your first home, especially if you are maybe someone like me who lives in a major city like London. Those house prices are just absolutely ridiculous. And so you may be thinking to yourself, you know, am I ever gonna have the chance to buy my own home and actually start a family where we can actually live in our own home, for example? So there are obviously fears around that. There's probably going to be some fears around retirement, and are we actually even going to have enough money to retire? And you know, if you do have to depend on the government, will they even have money to pay us? That is also a fear that people may have. And just the fact that maybe when you were growing up, your parents didn't really talk about money, and so because of that, you've then maybe made decisions that you potentially regret because you didn't know anything about money, and particularly because schools don't teach us about how to manage your money, how to save, how to invest. They don't teach us any of that. So we're kind of pushed into the world, taught to just go to school and get a job and make money, but then we're not taught what to do with that money. We're not taught how to manage that money. We're not taught how to even grow that money or make our money work for us. And so I think there are a lot of fears that will come about because of all of these other things. But I also think that at the same time, we are really privileged in that we have things like the internet. And so we have so much more access to information that maybe our parents or our grandparents didn't have. And so I think we should definitely be taking advantage of that. Things may seem harder, especially for our generation, but it doesn't make it impossible. I would 100% say, especially as a person of faith, that God 100% has your back, but also there are still things you can control. So let's talk about some of the things that you could potentially control when you're thinking about your financial future. And if you're liking this video so far, then feel free to give me a thumbs up, as it really does help to support the channel. Plus, I'm sure you know it's free. Okay, so my first tip is to first of all take a deep breath. Let's be calm, and let's also think about the things we currently have, and let's just be grateful for that. So for example, if you have shelter, if you are able to eat, if you are able to pay for transport and go to work, for example, you are already in such a great position, particularly if you know that you have extra income. Like once you pay for your expenses, for example, where you're still able to spend spend your money and do things that you like, you are in an amazing position. And that means that you can still take advantage, like you can still seek out opportunities with the money that you have. And yes, it would be nice to have more money, but you also want to be grateful for the money that you currently have. And so that's going to help you then think about your next steps when it comes to your financial future. So that's the first step. The second thing I want to talk about is, again, you want to think about what you can actually control. Now, we cannot control what the central banks do. We can't control what the Federal Reserve is going to do, what the Bank of England is going to do. We can't control that. We can't control, how they raise interest rates. We can't do any of that. We can't control what our governments do. If they have different policies that they want to bring out, we cannot control any of that. However, there are still some things that we can control. For example, I can control my own personal finances. So I can take the time to understand my budget. I can take the time to understand how much income I have coming in versus what's going out. I can also control some of my expenses. So I can decide if I want to cut something out if it's not serving me a purpose, or I can decide to reduce something, or I could even decide to make changes and find alternatives literally just from going through my budget and looking through my expenses. So remember, there are still things that you can control. Whenever I've gone through my clients' budgets, I've always found opportunities that they can save money easily without actually having to cut back, no matter what environment they're in. And so they are still able to save 20-25% of their income, even at a time where the economy may not be great, but they're still able to save and invest that amount of money because they have decided to take control of their personal finances, and they're now able to really look through their numbers and look through their expenses and evaluate whether they want those expenses or not. You can also control how you spend your money. For example, if you find that you are an impulse spender or you excessively spend on things that you don't necessarily care about, you can control that. That's something that I had to control myself. I used to just spend money on anything and everything, and I could never tell you what I spent money on, and that then had an impact on my financial future because I was spending every paycheck I had. And so at the end of the month, I had no savings, I had no investments, because all I did was just spend my money. Whereas because I took the time to control my spending, and being clear that I'm not saying that you now have to cut back on completely everything, what I'm saying is that I took the time to really understand how I was spending my money and whether I was spending money on things that genuinely matter to me and that are important and that I actually value. I wasn't doing that before. I was just spending money on nonsense things that I literally didn't care about. Whereas now when I spend my money, it's on things that I actually value. And so what that means is, because I've been able to control how I spend my money, that frees up money for me to also save and be able to invest for my financial future. And I've still been able to do that whilst living in an expensive city like London. Another thing that you could be thinking about is, well, if I want to become financially independent, what can I control now? So for example, in my case, I know that if I start investing my money now at an early stage, like in my mid-20s, I will be able to become financially independent. I will have an amazing retirement because I started so early. I can control what I invest my money into. I can control how much I invest my money, and I know that that will pay dividends in the future. And so if you're really worried about your financial future, the worst thing you want to do is shut down and just decide to spend everything because you feel like, your financial future is ruined anyway. Like you feel like we're screwed anyway, and so you're not going to do anything about your finances. No, what you want to do is actually ask yourself, well, what can I control? So yes, although the future could look bleak and there's so many articles basically talking about how things are going to become more expensive for us, there are still things that we can do today to help our future self tomorrow. Now, when it also comes to our financial future, I think one other tip I would give is that sometimes you just have to be selfish, guys. Like, I'm going to be really honest with you. When I decided to really start working towards financial independence and start overpaying on my debt, because that was the first thing that I needed to do, I needed to become selfish in that it meant that the way I would spend my money was going to be very different compared to my friends. So even though my friends would want to catch up every single week and go out to like nice restaurants and things like that, I had other goals. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I needed to do certain sacrifices, and it's not to say that I completely wanted to cut out everyone and just never go out, but but what I wanted to do was reduce the amount of times that I would go out so that I could put my money towards overpaying my debt. And that potentially meant that I had to be selfish. And I know that this is particularly difficult because we don't necessarily talk about money to our friends or our family. Like, this is something that I didn't even do when I was paying off my debt. None of my friends knew that I was in debt. Funnily enough, literally my friends have come to me and been like, I had no idea you were in debt until you spoke about it on YouTube. So even for me, I did not talk about money a lot with my friends and with my family. And so it can be difficult, you know, if your friends are trying to like get you to come out or celebrate with you, or maybe they've got some weddings and they want you to be a bridesmaid and you've got to pay all of this money to, you know, become a bridesmaid. There are a lot of things that are going to be pulling you, and sometimes you just have to be selfish. I'm going to be honest, you just have to be selfish. And it's not to say that I'm telling you to like cut out your friends or anything, but I'm just saying that you may be in different seasons, and that's okay. Like, if they're still happy to like spend their money on a lot of stuff and they're able to do that, that's fine. But if you're not in that position right now because you have other financial goals, you have to be selfish. You have to realize what's really important to you. Would you rather just spend the money now, or would you rather have some money to actually pay off your debt, or be able to save for your first home, or be able to work towards financial independence? I'm not saying that has to be an either or, but what I'm saying is that the balance may be different. There are going to be seasons where you're probably prioritizing your finances, and there are going to be seasons where you're going to be able to spend a lot more money just based on what you've done now. So for example, in my case, yes, I had to prioritize paying off my debt, saving up from my emergency fund, and starting with the investing process. But then once I had done that, I could then pull the lever off, and then I was able to spend money and go traveling because I had already prioritized my finances and got to the point where I was very clear on what I could control. So again, I'm not saying that it has to be either or, where you have to just literally just stop going out and things like that. I'm definitely not saying that at all. I 100% want you to still be able to spend your money. What I'm just saying is that depending on what you're working towards, and if you're really serious about achieving some of those goals, you may have to prioritize things. You may have to just focus a bit more on your finances, which means potentially you might have to be selfish. So I would say, again, really think about that, because I know that there can be a lot of peer pressure, and this is one of the things that my clients tend to struggle with. Like, they're trying to focus on their finances, but their friends just aren't at that headspace yet. That's okay. You don't have to just cut your friends off, but you just have to think about what's really important to you. And then the other thing I would say is, if you do have a fear of your financial future, one of the reasons particularly why I see like a lot of my clients have fears is because they've not necessarily looked at the numbers. So they don't really understand actually how much they might need. So if you're trying to become financially independent, or maybe you're just thinking, okay, how much am I going to need in retirement? You might think that I need like millions and millions of pounds or dollars just for me to have a decent retirement, and that's not the case. If you know that you're going to just have a particular lifestyle and you calculate how much that lifestyle is going to cost you, so let's say that normally you spend around £2,000 or dollars a month, well then that could be your guideline to thinking about your financial future. And so what my clients find is that they don't actually need to be saving and investing as much as they thought. Some of them think that they need to be saving and investing like £3,000 or dollars a month each month just to reach their goal of financial independence. No, that's not the case. For some of you, especially if you're not in a rush to become financially independent, or if you're not in a rush to like retire early or anything like that, you may only need to invest a few £100s or dollars a month. And so just take the time to look at your numbers, because that can actually alleviate some of the fears. So really just take the time to understand how much you're going to need for your financial future. Again, I've got a video talking about financial independence and how much you'll need and how to get started with that. So make sure you do check that out if you haven't already. I'll link it up here for you and in the description below. But again, a lot of our fears can be alleviated if we just look at the numbers. Now, if you're at the point where you've decided you want to make a change when it comes to your financial future, and you actually want to take your finances seriously, you want to be able to learn how to manage your money well so that you can save more, you can invest more, and still be able to spend your money too, then definitely check out my one-on-one coaching, because what I can do is literally go through step by step how you can take control of your finances, how you can actually work towards a great financial future despite everything going on and despite what articles articles are saying, where you're at the point where you can still be able to easily save up for your first home, and you can be able to reach financial independence and learn to be an investor even if you're a complete beginner. So make sure you do check that out if you haven't already. You can book a free call just to find out more about the program and ask any questions. So I'll make sure it's linked up here for you and in the description below. But what I will say is that yes, it may seem very daunting and scary thinking about, you know, your finances in the future, and especially if maybe in the past you haven't really been very good with money, or you feel like your parents haven't been very good with money and they've kind of passed that down to you. It can be scary. But what I'm stressing, and I hope that I've been able to articulate this well in the video, is that things can change. You can change your financial future. Just because you may have made mistakes in the past does not mean that you can't take control and have an amazing financial future for yourself. Again, coming from someone who used to live paycheck to paycheck, literally spending every penny she earned, I'm telling you that changes can be made, and I'm sure that if you do decide to make those changes and take control of your finances, your future self will thank you. So if you did like this video, then please do give me a thumbs up if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments, are you worried about your financial future? Have you decided to do anything about it? I do post every Tuesday, so if you would like to know more, then of course you can subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys next week.